Well, the transfer portal is not just alive for Oregon football. It still exists for college basketball as well, and Oregon still has needs in the transfer portal. So they missed on Tony Perkins. Oumar Ballo did officially commit to Indiana per John Rothstein. So the top two transfer portal desires I had for the Ducks this offseason, they're off the board, but in come the next wave of targets. So Oregon has reportedly reached out to Dayton sharpshooter Kobe Brea, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, Brea. And when I say sharpshooter, I mean about 49% from three this past season. He's been a flyer with Dayton for the last 4 seasons. He's got 1 year of eligibility left. And I can't ever say no to a guy that shoots it that well from three. I just can't. And he's got a laundry list of teams that have reached out to him, and Oregon is not the only suitor. I don't even know, frankly, if they're the top suitor for Brea's services in his final year of college basketball. But certainly that'd be a welcome addition, and you would have just kind of a concoction of wings, not necessarily a Jermaine Couisnard type who, is your alpha and your leader, but you would have a mix of size, shooting, and depth at the wing position that I can get behind there. But arguably the bigger name that Oregon is going after that I would love to see them get is Cliff Omoruyi. So this guy's name is spelled like Eugene Omoruyi. We all remember Bill Walton, Eugene from Eugene. He was like his favorite college basketball player ever. And I think that Omoruyi would be so good. So good. Now, there are other big men in the transfer portal. It's not the only option, but here's a list of schools that have reached out to Omoruyi, and he is a big man at Rutgers, by the way, who has also played 4 years of college basketball. North Carolina, UCLA, Kansas State, Georgia Tech, Georgetown, Baylor, Alabama, Oregon, Washington, Georgia, St. John's, and Mississippi State. So Oregon's trying to emerge out of the pack with some pretty heavy hitters. I mean, anytime you got Mick Cronin at UCLA, Hubert Davis at North Carolina, Jerome Tang at Kansas State's a good coach. Georgia Tech, I think they just had a decent season. I could be wrong about that, frankly. Baylor and Scott Drew, who just basically, in a public way, a la Dan Lanning, turning down the Alabama job, said no to Kentucky and that he was, 10 toes down staying with Baylor. Alabama, Nate Oates, they just went to the Final Four. Washington's got Danny Sprinkle now, which is a really good hire. Georgia, a team that Oregon beat early last year, they had a pretty nice year. They were in the NIT. But St. John's, Rick Pitino, and then Mississippi State with Chris Jans, who has been a grinder in the coaching world and is a heck of a college basketball coach. So that's quite the lineup of guys to go up against. But what you got to remember, Oregon's got Dana Altman, and Oregon's got program momentum right now because of the way they ended this year. If Oregon had not made the NCAA tournament, I wouldn't give them a great chance, or I wouldn't feel great about the Ducks' chances to go get Omoruyi here from Rutgers. But guy is 6'11", and when I say that he is a great fit for the Ducks, much like Oumar Ballo, I'm saying he's a great fit for the Ducks. So 2 reasons why Omoruyi would be exactly what Oregon's looking for. I think he could step in and be the starting center right away, because that's what he has done. I'll get to that in a moment. But this past year, he averaged about 10 points a game, a little over 8 rebounds, and almost 3 blocks a game. Guy's just a force in there. When you think about all the big men and all the shot blockers, and N'Faly Dante, Jordan Bell, Kenny Wooten, everybody who have been at the heart of these Dana Altman defenses, Omoruyi is a guy that would fit right in. Here is perhaps the most important element of why Cliff Omoruyi would be absolutely perfect for the Ducks. Over the last 3 seasons, he has not come off the bench in a single game. He did his freshman year for 23 games, but he has made 98 consecutive starts. Now, that's what his stat profile says. I don't know if he's missed a game here or there. Here's what I do know. Over 3 seasons as a big man, starting 98 games, that's over 30 games a year for those of us that are math majors out there. That has been a fleeting factor in the Oregon front court. You have not seen big men consistently stay healthy for several years now. Kenny Wooten wasn't a guy, I don't think, that got hurt regularly, but Dante and Biddle over the last couple of years have not been able. Frank Kepnong got hurt as well. They just that might have happened when Kepnong transferred to Washington. I think my timeline mentally might be off on that. So I think that this guy would be so great for two reasons. Number one, you want someone who's reliable. He is that. Reliable, productive, experienced. A couple of years ago, he was preseason All Big Ten first team at Rutgers, helped him to the NCAA tournament that year. The veteran experience is there, plug-and-play starter, fits with what Dana Altman wants to do. You can give him the ball down low, but he's got a big defensive presence. But the consistency of play in the front court is not just great because it allows Dana Altman to do what he's historically done, which is tinker with lineups early in the year and then figure it out at the end of the season and have them play their best basketball consistently. Now, he did that this year, but it wasn't quite as smooth, right? You had more stumbles than you would normally see with a Dana Altman team in February, and then, of course, they turned it on in March, big time there. But it would allow Nate Biddle, having Omoruyi in there, if he's able to, again, stay injury-free, it would allow Nate Biddle to not have to carry too heavy of a workload. He had a wrist injury this year, and then he got sick and he lost a bunch of weight. And hopefully he's going to be able to, get that back and get back to full strength in there. But I do not feel confident. And clearly the Oregon staff, if they're reaching out to a guy like Omoruyi, they don't either. I do not feel confident having Nate Biddle as Oregon's starting center, not because he isn't talented enough. He is. And I think he can be such a big time player, like all conference caliber guy, when he's able to have a fully healthy season. But that's the trick. That's the problem, is if he's not out there as often because Omoruyi is taking up a lion's share of the minutes, that increases the likelihood that you have him available down the stretch. And then you can play a little offense, defense, or play him at the 4, or play him with KJ Evans. You can do all sorts of stuff. And a 3-man front court rotation of KJ Evans, Nate Biddle, and Cliff Omoruyi would be stellar. I mean, you talk about having size, length, shot blocking, shooting, everything is there. I don't believe Omoruyi is a big three-point shooter. I'm going to double check that real quick, but he's someone who would be such a great fit. He's 6'11", 240. He's originally from Nigeria. N'Faly Dante was originally from Mali. And, I'm sure having that sort of background for Dana Altman, I think he's taken a couple of guys from Africa in the past. I think it can help. You look at what Randy Bennett has done at St. Mary's, for instance. He's got the Australian pipeline because he's worked with this guy, he's worked with that guy. So that's one of the reasons that I looked at this. I saw Oregon had offered him, and then I was diving into all the factors about him. I go, well, Dana's brought in those sorts of guys before. He is not a three-point shooter. He's 1 of 5 from beyond the arc this past year, but that's not why Oregon needs him. They need someone of that caliber. And look, if Omoruyi ends up going elsewhere, then you want to search for a guy of that caliber who is a veteran, who has got size, who is going to be productive and you don't have questions about. Because there's the health question with Nate Biddle, but there isn't necessarily a production question there. So bringing in a guy like this that just doesn't have a lot of questions, I think would be a really, really good addition for the Ducks. Last thing before I get out of here for today, Oregon baseball had a midweek game against a red-hot Gonzaga team. They'd won 7 in a row. They're 10-2 in WCC play, and Oregon jumped out to an 11-0 lead in the 4th inning. And then the bullpen had some, shall we say, struggles in the 7th inning. They allowed 7 runs in the 7th. It got all the way back to 11-9, and shades of the A's winning their 20th game in a row, a la Moneyball. Of course, it happened in real life too. Was coming into my head, but luckily Oregon hit 6 home runs on the day. Jacob Walsh had 2 of them. He's of course Oregon's all-time home run record holder. Mark he set this season. He's in the mid-30s for his career. Guy just is smashing the ball all over the yard. But it was a good starting effort, and Logan Mercado eventually came in, closed the door. Oregon won the game 14-9, and they take on Stanford later this week. Cardinal, as always in baseball, very good. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.